You're muted.
All right. How about now?
Very good.
Good, good. All right, everybody. We'll give everybody else 5 minutes or so to come into the session. We'll start with some greetings. I see some familiar faces. Vincent, how's it going, man? Long time no speak. How you been?
Hey, hold on. Oh, it's going good, real good. How are you?
No complaints, man. Good to see you, brother.
Good, good, good. I got a 1331 this time.
Nice. Was that a jump for you?
That was a pretty nice little jump up. Yeah,
Awesome. Good. So now we ready to go ahead and make that next jump and be done with it.
that's exactly it.
There we go. Love it. Love it. Awesome. Jennifer, how you doing?
Hello. Joining from my
Hi.
cell phone.
Okay, awesome. All right. And so Jennifer, I know you're in the July program already, and you're a first-time taker, right?
No, I'm a repeater. I'm a
Oh,
repeater,
you're
but
a repeater. Okay.
I took a break in between the last when I took the exam and now. So I kind of needed a little bit of a refresher.
Got you. Okay, cool, cool. So then you're familiar with the bar essays, but this contracts essay will be new to you then, huh?
Yeah, I just wanted to see kind of what was tested in February 2024 since I'm gonna take the July 2024.
Perfect. Yeah, today's essay is a great one. It's a great lesson. There's a lot of nuggets to take away from this essay, both on how you prepare and what to expect from the exam. So super excited to jump into this one today. Glad you are here to join us. Let's go with Perlita. How you doing today, Perlita? Okay, Perlita might still be. Get her microphone going. Let's go to Dorothy.
I'm
You there,
here.
Dorothy?
Sorry.
Oh, no. Okay. All right, Perlita. How you doing today?
I'm doing good. How about yourself?
I'm doing all right. How did you do? Did you take the February 24 exam?
No, I actually am kind of like in Jennifer's thing boat. I'm a repeater. I took it, the last time I took it was, oh my gosh, I can't even remember.
Okay. So we took a little break.
No, I do remember July of 22.
Got it. Okay. And so now we're ready to get back in the saddle.
We're ready to not give up. Yes.
There we go. All right. All right. Awesome. Well, good to have you. This would be a good little, get the wheels turning again, right? Get back to see what that exam looks like. So let me jump to somebody who I know took this in February. Let's go to Dorothy. Are you there, Dorothy?
Yeah, I'm here.
Awesome. So I know yesterday we had talked briefly and you had mentioned con law essay. But with the contracts essay, how did this one go for you? What did you think of this essay when you're on the
This
exam?
this was my second worst essay, which
Hmm.
was surprising for me because I felt like I was pretty confident in contracts as far as like knowing the folder system, but I would
Yeah.
think the flow, I just got stuck. I'm like, where am I? And I just started doing headings. I just started throwing shit out there like spaghetti. Like, so
Yeah.
like I was trying to stick to the Vulture system and go through formation. I'm like, am I in terms now? Like, where do I go next? So it was just, I was just all over the place. I ended up with a
So
55.
So to that point, Dorothy, it's one thing we're going to talk about, that this is one of those essays that I think 100% is one of those curveballs, right? Like it definitely, let me tell you, right? Somebody with 10 years of experience taking the bar, like reading this fact pattern, it's kind of like it gives you a little, reason to pause, a reason to slow down because it's a very unorthodox fact pattern and scenario. So, one of the nuggets that we'll learn today is that in those situations, I think, under the pressure of the exam, what we naturally will do is kind of just like pretty much what you did, right? Kind of panic into just like, all right, let me just start getting some headings down. Where typically, what the solution should be is comfortably spending that additional 5 minutes trying to see if you can like break through on some clarity on like how am I going to approach this. So all right, it's 6:05. Let's go ahead and jump into this essay. So, welcome everybody. This is the second, session of the week after we've gotten our results from Friday for the California Bar. Today, we are going through one of the bar essays from this past February. We're going through the contracts essay. And the goal here today is to, right, not just look at what we missed on this particular contracts essay, but really learn from our mistakes, right? So that way we can improve. right? We all know this the saying, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. So let's learn from this and see where we can all individually improve. And there's so many areas to improve when it comes to essays. Was it your issue spotting and organization? Was it the depth of your analysis? So hopefully what we cover in this group session will start to give you some insight on where you could have done better on this contracts essay. So let's go ahead and initiate the PTSD, right, by bringing up the February 24 exam. Give me 1 second. Oh, that's because it's not up. All right, and there it is. I think another, reality too is that this is a crazy exam, or excuse me, this is a crazy question to be the last essay question, right? So I can also imagine just like, you kind of hit that wall of endurance at different parts of the exam, namely at the end of sessions, especially the end of the second session. So this was right before the PT. This was definitely a doozy to discuss right as your last essay. So let's go ahead and get refamiliar with the facts. Okay, I'm gonna make that a little bit bigger. Dorothy, can you give me verbal confirmation that that's big enough to read?
Yep, it is.
Okay, I can go a little bit bigger. There we go, even better. All right, so let's go ahead and read this paragraph at a time, right? And I'm gonna kind of walk you through, just even in that first read, things that I'm thinking of as I'm going through it. So we'll take it one at a time. Let's go with Vincent to start us off. So Vincent, can you do us the honors, man, and just read that first paragraph for us?
Yes, I can. Hold on. I'm on my cell phone here, but I got it. Let's see. Brian, owner of a commercial bakery, and Sam, owner of a bakery supply business, met for the first time and discussed Brian's inability to find a reliable source of maple topping. When Sam told Brian he could supply the maple topping, they orally agreed that Sam would immediately ship 500 gallons of topping at $20 per gallon. Sam then added that he did not want to ship without something in writing. And Brian replied, I will send written confirmation tomorrow.
Okay. So that was a paragraph. Now, one, in reading comprehension, put that into your own words. This is something that I love to do, Vincent. And let me put this in my own words and summarize what went down in each paragraph so I know I am developing my reading comprehension. So in your own words, can you, give me the key points of this paragraph?
Right. So Brian and Sam met. They're both commercial merchant types. Brian wanted maple topping. He wanted a source, somebody he could rely on. And Sam agreed. Sam agreed. There's an agreement there. Is it a contract? Well, they orally agreed. And so Sam was like, yeah, I will immediately ship 500 gallons. They had a deal at $20 per gallon. But Sam wanted something in writing. He wanted to formalize this whole thing. And Brian, at this point, hadn't done so. He says, I will do it. I'll send written confirmation. We can put it in writing and make it official tomorrow.
Perfect. Awesome. That was great reading comprehension. Make sure we got all of it. So what I like to do, everybody, when I'm reading through a question is on the left-hand margin, I'm going to write 1 to 2 words about what this paragraph is about. Here, this paragraph is essentially about, right, maple topping and, contract formation. That's essentially what we have here. Now, on the right-hand side, what I want to start to do is write down some soft triggers, right? I tell everybody that you don't want to get caught up in focusing on issue spotting during your initial read. This is so important, right? Because when you do so, you start to get tunnel vision for certain issues. Your goal is to really take in all the facts, take in what's going on, and soft triggers, you want to get out of your mind onto paper and continue to take in the facts and look for other issues. So, what I do want to think of is like, right, what comes to mind as far as any issues or things to discuss just from this first paragraph? You guys can raise your hands. Any volunteers? What would you discuss from this first paragraph? What would we discuss? All right, I'm gonna start calling in, y'all. Let's see. Let's go with Kendra. Mm,
Sorry,
Kendra.
I just got in the house from work. I was stuck in traffic.
Okay,
So
did you read?
I'm just getting in.
Okay, I'll come back to you.
Okay.
All right, let me go to Dorothy. Dorothy, what would you trigger from this first paragraph?
Kind of what you already just said, like the whole contract formation. Was there an offer? Is there acceptance? Like, was there a contract formed?
Okay, there's one other big issue that I'm going to write down as a soft trigger, Dorothy.
Oh, go ahead.
Can you see what it is outside of formation?
I was just thinking about like the oral.
Exactly.
It's not written and it's over $500 worth of goods.
There it is. Statute of frauds. Okay, so look,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know yet. I'm going to write it down, but I need everybody in here to know that when you're reading a contracts essay and they say, oh, they said this, or they orally agreed, right? That's a huge red flag to at least consider statute of fraud. So boom, statute of frauds in that right-hand corner. Dorothy, go ahead and read that next paragraph for us, please.
For the next 3 weeks, Brian was busy negotiating a conference center catering contract and forgot to send Sam the confirmation. The catering contract obligated Brian to provide large quantities of pastries with maple topping. Brian then recalled his promise to Sam and sent him a purchase order on his standard form for 5,000 gallons of maple topping at $20 per gallon to be delivered to Brian's place of business in 2 weeks.
Okay, so a lot more to just take in. Like right into the second paragraph, we're already starting to see, this thing fall apart and there be issues. So reading comprehension, kind of summarize for me, what's the key takeaways here?
Just Brian got busy. He forgot to do what he said, like do it the next day. It seems like because he forgot, he made a mistake. And instead of doing it for the original 500 gallons, he did it for 5,000 gallons on his letterhead, at the same price of $20 per gallon. And then put, it was to be delivered to Brian's place in 2 weeks. And
Okay.
that his new contract also required large quantities of pastries with maple topping.
Yeah. So what exactly? Yeah. So you had a new contract with somebody else. Okay. So Brian then enters into a contract with, who did it say?
It said
conference center.
conference center catering.
Conference center catering, right? And so then what happens is that prompts him to be like, okay, yeah, I know somebody who can give me maple topping and let me send them a purchase order. So then a purchase order is sent for 500, or excuse me, 5,000. So automatically, right, some of us are just like, what the hell, right? And this question causes you to kind of hit a fork in the road in a couple of different ways, and you have to just kind of like sit down and kind of infer what is, likely the case here. So first off, one thing that I don't think a lot of students caught based off a conversation is actually catching the fact that for the next 3 weeks he was busy negotiating. What does that time frame seemingly do as somewhat of a part of our analysis, right? For the next 3 weeks he was doing this, and then he sent this order for 5,000. That time frame, what does that time frame say to you, Dorothy? What is that? Yeah.
Is it like a lapse? What do you mean, like as far as like him, like the contract with the original person?
Exactly, a lapse, right? Because it says that would you they orally agreed that Sam would immediately ship
Mhm.
500 gallons. So even if, right, because we're gonna get into this whole like, is there a contract? Which one is the contract? How many contracts are there? And even if contract one of 500 was one, the oral agreement was that Sam would immediately ship 500 gallons. And then it says this is 3 weeks later. So it's almost as if anything that now is happening afterwards has nothing to do with that. Okay. Did you happen to discuss lapse or think of lapse on your essay?
Heck no, not until you just asked me what the significance of the 3 weeks was.
Yeah, right. So I think that was a very sneaky one. I think there was other reasons why contract one wouldn't be enforceable. So I don't think it's very big. Even in my first round of reading it, that wasn't something that immediately popped out because there was so much here. But I do think that's an angle here. So, okay, so that's number one, the 3-week aspect. Now, the other one is that it put 5,000 gallons. So, Dorothy, we've seen situations like this in a lot of different variations through our practice, right? But typically, it's associated with a mistake. Do you think this is a mistake? That's what you really kind of had to like lean into. That's your fork in the road. Was this a mistake by Brian to put 5,000 instead of 500?
That's what I did. I said it was a mistake.
So you thought it was a mistake by Brian?
Mm-hmm.
Got you. Upon reading it right now, are you still confident in that path, or do you think maybe
Not based on your line
second
of
read
questioning.
it wasn't a mistake? Would you say I missed that?
I said not based on your line of questioning.
Yeah, I mean, and look,
Yeah.
I don't have the sample answer, but I'm going to tell you like what my train of thought is, and I would hope to believe that it's correct, right? But I'm going to give it to you, and you tell me based off of reading this what you think.
Well, because he needs the large quantities now for the new contract. For the new contract. So it's like he's being greedy now because he needs it.
Exactly. So here are like all the things that I'm using to really go the other way down the fork on the road here, that this was not a mistake by him. One, it's that they are right giving us this information that, as you mentioned, he had this new contract, right? This is all prompted by this new contract for this conference catering where he's going to have to provide large quantities of pastries with maple toppings. So they don't say exactly how many it is, but they're giving us this sense that like, oh, this new contract came in, and then that was the case. And then it says from that, he recalled his promise and sent him a purchase order form for 5,000, right? So here are some of the multiple reasons. One, there's nothing in the fact pattern that says like, oh, he made a mistake and added an extra zero, right? Or he mistakenly did it. And then guess what? After we get to the end of this, we'll see that typically what happens when somebody makes a mistake like that is typically the other way around, right, Dorothy? It's like they made a mistake and put 5,000. It was then, let's say Sam, who was like, oh, 5,000, absolutely. That's a big payday for me. And then Brian was like, oh, I didn't actually mean to buy 5,000. I only needed 500. Right. But that's not what we had here. Right. We had more so Brian upset and Brian saying, I'm not taking that 500. You're supposed to send 5,000. So you see all of those factors now. Would you lean more towards no mistake?
Right. That it was intentional. Yeah.
Exactly. Now we're still going to talk about mistake, right, as a possible defense, but again, on behalf of whom? It doesn't look as though this was a mistake. And that is very important when you're getting grounded with the question, everybody, because you have to know like how the party's positioned and what do they want, and everything is being set up to believe that Brian wanted this contract to be for 5,000. All right. So again, a doozy, something that you have to be very slow and intentional to even catch that. And again, this was a very convoluted fact pattern. So Dorothy, I know you weren't alone in that way that you went. But yes, let's continue to work through it together. So let's go with Keith. Keith, go ahead and read paragraph 3 for me, please.
No problem. No problem. Just a second. Okay. Okay, paragraph 3. Sam received Brian's purchase order, but did not notice the change in gallonage. He saw the delivery date, but in light of Brian's delay in sending the confirmation, he did not believe it was firm. The same day, Sam sent an acknowledgement restating Brian's purchase order items and then left on a 4-week vacation to a remote locale.
All right. Again, another packed paragraph that we have to unpack and see where's this taking us. Let's go line by line, Keith, and hopefully some stuff that I would want us to be able to like build on top of our understanding and some maybe micro analyzing. So it says Sam received Brian's purchase order, but did not notice the change in gallonage. So already right there, we have, Sam being unaware of this. Of how much is going to be. So that's already kind of setting up what topic to discuss, Keith.
Would that be like a modification?
Him not knowing about the change. I think modification is something that could possibly come up, more so triggered by the paragraph above. So, but him not knowing about the change, what would that trigger? Something else.
Is that a change in consideration? I'm thinking.
And that'd be close to modification. This is looking like a mistake, right? Like, whoa, I didn't know this. So there could be a mistake here, right? Where it's like, I didn't know that this contract was for 5,000. So that whole did not notice, I'm thinking is a possible trigger for mistake. He saw the delivery date, but in light of Brian's delay in sending the confirmation, he did not believe it was firm. So Keith, this is one of those things where, again, this question is in so many ways playing with your emotions, and this one's really tugging on just your confidence in knowing contract law. But when you read that sentence, in light of Brian's delay in sending the confirmation, he did not believe it was firm. Have you learned anything in contract law that allows somebody to treat a term as non-binding because of a previous performance?
That yeah, I actually did. My brain is kind of fried right now, but I actually do recall that. It is what is that called? Gosh.
Is it trade usage or course of dealing?
I'm sorry about that. Yeah.
So trade usage, so you guys are mixing up something from the parole evidence rule of something that you can bring in to evidence as an example of what things normally are, right? But I've never seen where you can take a current term and make it non-binding because of previous dealings. So so I put down as a potential issue parole evidence. So we'll come back to that. But in the totality as well, there's going to be ultimately two issues here outside of there's one issue of the delivery date and there's another issue. But when I first read this, the first thing I'm thinking is that that's not a reason to treat this as a non-binding term. All right. So then we go into that same day, Sam sent a signed acknowledgement form restating Brian's purchase order items and then left on a 4-week vacation to a remote locale. So we can already see the issue, the writing on the wall here that he's gone for 4 weeks. He wanted the delivery in 2 weeks for this conference catering, right? Everything. So we're going to have a problem there. And then let me go to Perlita, whenever you see purchase order and then a response with an acknowledgement form, what does that typically trigger?
You said a purchase order with what?
When you see a purchase order and then the next thing you see is a response through an acknowledgement form, that's terminology that typically is triggering what? Do you recall? Yep, but a specific concept with the acceptance, phone a friend, anybody know?
Is that firm offer, D?
Not firm offer. Kendra?
Would that be the merchant's confirmatory memo?
That's statute of fraud. So not necessarily by a purchase order and then acknowledgement form. All right, we got one more, Jennifer. You know what it is?
No.
It is Battle of the Forms 2207.
I have it on my thing too. Doggone it.
Right. So that is the typical trick, right? That's a typical language used for 2207. The battle of the forms. One person sends their form and it has these terms. And then another person sends their acknowledgement form, their response, and it has their terms, right? So we see that terminology associated with 2207. So I'm just going to put 2207 as a slight, note on the side. What I can tell you is this was 100%, in my opinion, not a big 2207 problem. So if you talked about 2207 in detail, right, this is one of those areas where I think it's like a red herring. They used language from that rule, but it did not end up being really at issue based on the facts. So then you go into the last paragraph. Upon his return, Sam shipped the 500 gallons of maple topping to Brian. By that time, Brian was in default of the catering contract due to lack of maple topping. Brian had tried, but had been unable to reach Sam while he was on vacation. Because Brian had been unsuccessful in obtaining an alternate source of maple topping, the conference center canceled its contract, resulting in $100,000 in lost profits. All right, so now we have some lost profits. Somebody help me out. Where do we typically see that come up in our analysis for remedies? That specifically goes where?
Consequential damages.
Consequential damages under expectation damages. Absolutely. Okay. So good. We highlight that, write that in the corner. Brian refused delivery of the 500 gallons of maple topping and sued for breach of contract. Okay. Seeking that 100,000 in lost profits. Okay. All right. So, and Dorothy, I'm going to come back to you. I think that, again, ultimately, because there's a fork in the road and because it's not entirely clear, right? I do want to say that I think all of us could still do well if we didn't go down the idea that the 5,000 was a mistake. But I think what's important is to catch is that it is unclear. So when that's the situation and there's a fork in the road, you more or less kind of want to account for both ways, right? And both routes. So let's now jump into the legally fit approach to how we like to go through essays, right? And after I finish reading a question, I always want my students to stop and think. And you ask yourself, why are the parties upset and what do they want? Why are the parties upset and what do they want? So Wood, in this question, why is Brian upset and what does he want?
Brian's upset because he didn't get what he wanted, which was the source of maple topping. So he wants his lost profit. Like there's 100,000 in lost profit
from the contract that he lost. Okay.
Yeah.
So I want you to go into a little bit more detail there, right? Into the specifics, right? So what were the things that occurred of why he would be then upset? So you kind of gave it to me generically, like, yeah, he didn't get the maple topping. So what was specific? And I'll go back to the fact pattern for you.
He expected delivery within 2 weeks. This is what he expected. However, when Sam responded with a signed acknowledgement, it was like, and then left for a 4-week vacation without even telling anything.
So that's one. Let's summarize that. So one was late delivery. That was one reason why he was upset. What's another reason?
Late delivery, and it was, let me see, 1 second. And it was not, it was, I don't want to say if it was a perfect tender. He basically didn't get what he wanted. He wanted 5,000, but he only received 500.
Exactly. If we're going in the route of he wanted the 5,000, the other thing he's upset about is that this order was missing 4,500 gallons.
Non-conforming goods, basically.
Exactly, right? So it was not a perfect tender. So those are the two things that he would be upset about. And then Sam, what would Sam be upset about, Wood?
Let's do something here. Well, Sam, let's see, Sam is not getting his money.
Yeah. Sam is upset because, hey,
I get paid.
I shipped the 500 gallons and I did not get anything back in return. Right. The question is not about Sam. It's not about Sam, but it's still good to just realize that, like, other than that, there's really not much that he specifically should be upset about in theory. Right. And then it's good to know that the question is not really focused on Sam. Of course, we have to recognize both sides of this in order to objectively analyze what Brian's outcome will be. All right. So look, I'm going to share this now with everybody, Wood. And I want you to take a look, everybody take a look at my notes on why Brian is upset and why Sam is upset and what do they want. To me, and again, this took a little bit of time, right, in my 15 minutes to really slow down. This wasn't like a easy peasy contracts question, right? So I put, Brian wants the court to find that there was a contract for a total of 5,000 gallons and that Sam breached. That's ultimately what he wants. Why is he upset? His order was missing 4,500 gallons. His order was delivered late and he lost 100K in profits. Okay. The reason why we do this is that this then helps you fill out your issue spotting, that everything has to be connected to these things, right? What does Sam want? Sam wants the court to find that there was no contract, or if there is one, it was only for 500 gallons and there was no strict time for delivery. Because if so, then he would not be in breach. Okay. Sam shipped the 500 gallons and has not received payment. He's upset about that. Brian sent a written confirmation 3 weeks later than promised. So I'm just going to write that down so I don't forget that. And then Brian's written confirmation had incorrect terms. So that's kind of more so the angle that he's going. All right. So here was my approach to this. So I like to start my essays with an intro, right? And so this was something that I came up with to ground myself, to kind of basically say how I'm going to attack this. All right. So Dorothy, go ahead and read it. And then I want you to tell me what you think of it and what you did similarly or differently for yours.
Okay. In order for Brian to remedy his issue, he must prove that a contract was formed and that the terms include 5,000 gallons with the delivery date of 2 weeks from creation of the purchase order form. Sam will want the court to find that there is either no contract at all, or the contract was only for 500 gallons and the delivery date was not firm.
Perfect.
Okay.
Yeah, and then you could do the second part too.
2 routes to contract formation for Brian. There was an oral agreement that was modified to increase the quantity for 5,000, and the oral agreement for 500 gallons was formed, but isn't enforceable, and a new contract was formed for 5,000 gallons.
Okay, so let's read that one more time. Make sure we got that. There's 2 ways to contract formation for Brian. There was an oral agreement that was modified to increase the quantity to 5,000, right? Or you can go with the oral agreement for 500 gallons was formed but isn't enforceable, and a new contract was formed for 5,000. Okay, I think under the circumstances, all of those are options. So yeah, Dorothy, with that said, what is your opinion? What do you think of this now reading this? And yeah, was this similar or different than your big picture view when you first read it?
I did not go this route. I was too stuck on being rigid of like just regular contract formation, and then like whether I was thinking pro evidence, like oral agreement, what they talked about. Like I was just really all over the place. And like seeing it laid out like this, I see it clearer. But in the moment, I didn't see it.
It was a lot. Yeah. It was just one of those things where it's like, yeah. So let's then continue to go through, and I'm sure some of those issues we talked about are gonna have you would have discussed, but maybe then it lacked that organization and that cleanliness. I kind of heard from some various students that for the contract, I was just putting down headings for everything because I just didn't know, kind of where to go. But this, really articulates how at least I'm going to approach this scenario. I will add even one thing, Dorothy, though. An add-on is, and again, it's almost like I don't want to create too many forks in the road, but in theory, you could also say, Brian could also want or be okay with the fact that it was only 500 gallons plus, delivery date. Because even then, Sam would still be considered to be in breach.
For the
right?
2 weeks, right?
Because it's right. So it's almost like, yeah, there's two different grounds for breach. And, you have to discuss really both of them in order to see if one or there's not. But like, even if it's 500 and the delivery date is still binding, it's still a breach even that way. But again, like, there's so many forks in the road. I don't think you have to really lay out all the options in that sense. And that could be difficult to do in that time frame, but at least seeing, all of this and doing some of those forks in the road, I think is what was going to get you that 60, 65, and possibly more on this essay. So let's take a look at the outline that I created for this. First thing is applicable law. Hopefully we did not get so caught up in the hecticness of this exam that we forgot to talk about the UCC. Right. And then I went into contract formation, right? Contract formation. And I started off with the oral agreement between Sam and Brian. So for the oral agreement, you need mutual assent and consideration. And I'm going with looks like a contract was formed. Really quickly, I'm going to go back to the original fact pattern. And right, it says right here, they orally agreed that he would ship 500 gallons for 200. So they're not really making formation a big deal for this first oral agreement, right? It seems to be an offer and an acceptance, and they don't give us any facts of the details. So there's not really much to discuss on formation for that first contract, that oral agreement. All right, consideration, right? You would go through that in a breeze. So you would discuss all of that. Okay, let me just tab that over. So looks like a contract was formed. Now, after you finish, now what is seemingly an oral agreement, okay? One, in theory, it kind of rules out the traditional concept of lapse. So now that's becoming something that maybe we won't discuss, at least not in detail, because Dorothy, what is the function of lapse? Lapse is a way to do what?
To avoid the contract, to defeat it.
Not to void the contract, but more specifically to do what?
To say there was not like a termination.
Termination of
acceptance of the offer.
Of the offer. So lapse is termination of the offer. Well, you cannot terminate the offer if
it was already formed. It was already formed. The contract was already
exactly. You cannot terminate an offer if the offer was already accepted and there was a contract formed. So what looked like that lapse situation, which again was something good just to even see and catch, ultimately is not really at play because the contract was formed. Okay. So then, right, you go into defenses to formation. So let's look into see if this oral agreement between Sam and Brian is enforceable. And this is where you'd have a big statute of frauds discussion. Okay. So first question is the contract within the statute of frauds? The answer there is yes, goods over the sale of 500. You could do the math there. It's easily going to be over $500. This is good. Maple topping. It's movable. So yes. Was there a sufficient writing, right? This is where you have to kind of slow down for a second. Arguably not a sufficient writing because it doesn't have the correct quantity from the oral agreement. Also not signed by Sam, but C, the merchant confirmatory memo rule, which also wouldn't end up working. But I think it's worth mentioning because they really prompted you to think of that. All right. So again, let's make sure we're all on the same page here. So what we're saying is that can you use this writing down here, right? This purchase order as the written confirmation, the writing, right, of this previous oral agreement. Right. Well, the issue is that this has the wrong quantity term and it doesn't appear to be a mistake. So in theory, this should not be deemed a sufficient writing for that original agreement. This is essentially, in theory, a new agreement. But if it was a mistake, maybe you can argue that maybe it still should be. And typically mistakes are not reasons to not have the contract be enforceable under statute of frauds. Right. So you can make your arguments. But then the other issue is that it has to be signed by the party to be charged here, right? So again, Brian wants there to be a contract. We're charging this in theory to Sam. And so Brian sent the purchase order of this contract. Did Sam ever sign this? There are no facts that Sam signed this. Merchant's confirmatory memo likely would not work under these facts. Let me refresh you all on the rule really quickly. Okay, it's already up. Contracts. All right. Statute of frauds. Let's find you. All right. Merchant's confirmatory memo. The writing does not have to be signed by the party to be charged if the contract was made orally by two merchants, right? Here, that seems to be the case. And one merchant sends over the signed writing that memorializes the oral contract that was entered into, right? And then there's the issue is that does this actually serve as something that memorializes the oral contract when it seemingly is a new contract, when it's a completely different amount that seems to be a desired amount by Brian. So that's where this is not truly something that memorializes the conversation. All right. And then that's that. So that's why I'm leaning more towards no on the merchant's confirmatory memo. Any questions so far, as then we're going to leave now the sufficient writing? Okay. So then the next thing you have as an exception is the statute of frauds. I put Brian's best bet would be promissory estoppel, but you're right, that's just kind of reaching for one of the exceptions, but all those main ones are not going to work. So I'm leaving this analysis right here, right? So like kind of major conclusion here at this point. Looks like a contract was formed. Looks like a contract was formed for 500 gallons, but is not enforceable due to statute of frauds. Okay. So now where am I at? Okay, so then now I move forward. So this is where I still kind of went along with, even if this was a contract for 500, how do we get to the 5,000? And I went with, if that's not a contract, how can we get to the 5,000? So there's two ways to look at this. You can either look at that purchase order that Brian sent as a whole new offer, right? Like that was the 500. That was an oral agreement. I told you I was going to we're going to do this immediately. 3 weeks have gone by. That clearly has dropped, right? We just didn't ever say anything about it. And then now we started this whole new offer where I sent you this purchase order for 5,000 and I'm wanting to see if you can give me 5,000 or not. The other way of looking at this is that the 500, let's say if that other contract, that oral contract is enforceable and it was for 500, well, now we are modifying it to 5,000. Right. So there's a fork in the road. I decided to go down both roads here. All right. So first I did purchase order as offer. So is this an offer? You would go through yes, acceptance, Sam's acknowledgement form. Okay. And then there you would discuss not noticing the change in gallonage and right, just to address the elephant in the room. But just because you didn't notice, right, that particular term is not going to mean, right, especially when you're a merchant, it's not going to mean you're not going to be deemed to have accepted the agreement. All right. So you sent the acknowledgement. That's going to be a contract. Consideration here, yes. Statute of frauds. This is in writing. Defenses to formation. This is where now I would bring up unilateral mistake, right? This is not mutual. And I put here, doesn't appear to be a mistake on Brian's behalf, right? If you want it to be on the safe side, maybe you can discuss it, mutual mistake. If Brian did not mean 5,000, but again, I'm thinking that he did. Let me italicize that. But that's where unilateral mistake is going to come in. So notice that we did not talk about 2207. Okay. So Kendra, I heard you, you're like, oh, 2207. So like, obviously like, rung a bell on 2207. Can you see why 2207 really isn't likely a big issue here?
At this point, I can't really recall, and I think just I may have just like dumped the whole like and that's probably why I don't have much to discuss about it. But I think when I was outlining my essay or preparing for the essay, I did like write 2207 down, but then I think I couldn't meet the elements, so I just decided not to go into the analysis. So I can't even like give you a solid answer as to why it doesn't apply or may not be a strong
Okay. But I mean,
analysis
that's
to
pretty much
include.
it. Like when you start to go through it, it's just like it doesn't really fit for that traditional analysis. Like that's really the answer. So
Mhm.
let's take a quick refresher of 2207. Let's bring up one of our legally fit charts, right? So you go through the preliminary questions, right? So the typical way that you have a 2207 problem is you have a purchase order with material terms. You have a acknowledgement form with the same material terms, but some additional term. All right. And so here, that's not the case, right? So does the UCC apply? Yes, this is goods. Was the acceptance definite, seasonable, and has new terms? And the answer there is no, right? So you stop at the preliminary questions for Battle of the Forms. What was the acknowledgement form saying, Kendra? I'll go back to the essay. What did it say in the
Okay.
acknowledgement form?
I think he agreed to the $500. Let me double check.
Yeah, let's not think it's right here. I did this
Sign
shit.
acknowledgement restating Brian's purchase order items and then left. Yeah, so he acknowledged to restate Brian's purchase order items, which would have been the 5,000 gallons of maple topping.
So is there a new term in the response?
No, it's not. It's the same exact term.
Exactly. So you can't have Battle of the Forms, and that's what I'm saying. Like, and it's almost like you're not giving it
Mhm.
to me, right? But look, you can't have Battle of the Forms if the forms are the same. So that's exactly what happened here. You had a purchase order form, right? And then the acknowledgement form, it says restated Brian's purchase order items, and then did not mention any additional terms. So that's how we rule out 2207. The only other route of maybe 2207 is saying that like, oh, first it was 500 gallons, and then now it's like, so the first offer was from the other 500 statement, and then it was 5,000. But remember, Battle of the Forms does not work when you are changing a material term, when you're changing the quantity. Battle of the Forms is when it's like, oh yeah, 500 gallons for $20 a gallon. And if there's any issues, let's arbitrate in Texas, right? The arbitration is like this other add-on term, but you can't have a difference in a material term and it still be 2207. So boom, that's how we rule that out. All right. So let's go back to our outline. And that was just explaining why 2207 was not there. All right. And then, so purchase order. So defenses to formation, the best bet is unilateral mistake. At this point, Kendra, who are we kind of leaning in favor of at this point?
In favor of Sam.
Oh, I'm leaning in favor of Brian.
Oh no, I'm sorry. No, sorry, I'm sorry. In favor of Brian.
Yeah,
because of the new contract and it not being a mistake.
Exactly. If this is a new contract, and you can't claim mistake here, right? Because you didn't read the contract.
Yeah.
When you sent an acknowledgement form with the same
you
exact
restated
terms.
the same terms. Yeah.
Exactly. So yeah, this is not looking like this is going to be a mistake, but we're going to discuss it. So yeah, this is looking in favor of Brian on this being a new offer. And if for whatever reason you went the other route, you could say that this was simply a modification of the 500, and under the UCC, Kendra, what do you need for a valid modification?
Good faith.
You need a writing, or you need it. No, you don't. No, you don't.
You need good faith. Somebody helps you out.
Yeah, good faith. It was wood. I heard it, boy.
All you need is
I
good
need a
faith under the
refresher for
My
UCC.
sure. Yes, good thing.
my
Yes,
bad, D. I'm
common
sorry.
law. You need a writing. Yes.
No, neither one. You need a right. Like, well, the writing part is
What?
common law is additional consideration.
Additional
Sorry.
consideration. Yes, yes. I need a refresher.
Yes, that's what we need is a refresher. So, um, so we all we need is good faith. And here, yeah, you would say, if we're analyzing as a modification, that this could be deemed a valid modification. So however you want to cut it, it looks like, yeah, a contract for 5,000, like we could see a route to him being able to get that. The court will likely find that the contract was created and the terms are 5,000 gallons. Now, here's issues that I did not discuss. And to be honest, like this is something that even in making my outline, the reason why I kind of come up with why the party's upset and what do they want is that you have to address all the elephants in the room. So I still do need to figure out how and where I'm going to discuss the whole issue around delivery and whether that delivery term was going to be valid. So I would probably go right at the end of this and just talk about it, right? Because like when in doubt and I can't kind of figure out what topic it's associated with or where it should go, I'll just talk about it like as a standalone and kind of just like address it. So especially when it's what I'm believing to be a raise and dismiss. So I'm going to go terms and then specifically the delivery date. And then I'm just going to do a pretty much a free flow analysis, mentioning that, you know, with this new offer, the delivery date was stated to be 2 weeks. And that what's his name? Sam cannot lawfully, you know, treat that or unilaterally treat that as non-binding because of previous dealings where the order forms weren't sent immediately, right? Like they're not even, you're kind of, he's even comparing apples and oranges, right? Like go back to the fact pattern. And it says that originally what happened was Brian was saying that like he'll send this final version of the written agreement, right, to like finalize this, right? But there was never a delivery date before, but it was this whole like, I'll send this final written version of our agreement to move forward. And he never sent that. And now you're using that to justify why an actual delivery date is not binding, right? So you're like, again, you're not even comparing apples to apples. It's really apples to oranges. And therefore, yeah, I just don't think that that was lawful to do. And I'm going to address it. But it's a good pro tip there again with like, when you don't know kind of where exactly it fits in, still address the elephant in the room and just give it a separate heading and kind of work through it. Okay. Keith, you got a question?
Yeah, I think you kind of just answered my question. But I know you were saying that there was really no battle reformed issue in this essay, but do you think the graders were kind of looking for us to kind of bring that up and state that we at least we know there's no battle reformed issue?
I don't think. If so, I would just do it at the end. I definitely don't think there's a lot of points to that. If at the end you could do battle of the forms, raise and dismiss, like all that raise and dismiss stuff like that, like that's not really going to impact the question. If you had time, you could like squeeze it at the end, just like in that same way, just like a little add-on. But I probably, if it was me, yeah, I'd only do it in that situation if I happen to run through everything else.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Right. Yeah, and this again, and if you did it right, like this is like 3 to 4 lines, right? Of just like it's the same material terms. There was no additional term. Da 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 da. This is not battle of the forms. Boom.
Okay.
So issues not discussed. PER. Let's come back to that one. Anticipatory repudiation. So I've heard that one from some students. This is not an anticipatory repudiation, right? Anticipatory repudiation is when one person makes an unambiguous statement that they're not going to perform when performance is still yet to be due and neither party has completed performance. So this is clearly not that situation. There was a delivery date. That person missed that delivery date. So they have just now entered breach, right? So this is not an anticipatory repudiation. Okay. And then we talked about 2207 not being the case. So lastly on this, like, let's talk about PER. PER is when you have something from out of court that you want to bring in as evidence to basically to supplement the contract. Usually it's a term that you want to add, or if it's to explain an ambiguous term, right? So yeah, the only route that you could go with this is if somehow you're saying the delivery date is an ambiguous term, which there's no reason to really analyze and believe that it is. Like 2-week delivery date is pretty clear. But you can, if you can argue that the delivery date is ambiguous, then maybe you can bring in some trade again, but you're comparing apples to oranges. So I'm not sure if there was actually points for this or if this was just like a red herring. But I can definitely say that I don't believe that this would work, but I can't quite put my thumb on whether or not this was worth any points. I would not have probably discussed this though myself. Out of curiosity, did anybody here receive a 60 or a 65 on this essay and they did discuss PER? It still doesn't tell us for sure if you needed to or should have, but that would at least be a starting point. Okay, so yeah, it doesn't look like it. Karen, you had a question?
I just want to add that I actually discussed PER, and that's my worst essay contract.
Oh, okay. So it's the opposite. Yeah, that you did discuss PER
Yeah.
and then the score was not good. Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, I don't think PER here. Again, just because it doesn't work in any of its traditional ways that we see it work.
Michael
right.
also put in the chat he got a 60 and he did not discuss it.
Okay. So you got a 60, yeah. And then Kendra, I know Kendra, you said you got a 65 on this one, huh?
Yeah, and I did not discuss it.
And you did not discuss it. Okay. So it looks like, yeah, we're leaning with our soft data right now that, yeah, this was not something to discuss. Okay. So that takes us into then question 2. All right. And so it's pretty much the heavy lifting is done, right? The prioritization of your time should have been in the first part. So now you just get into perfect tender. So Sam did not perfect tender. It was late and the wrong quantity. So you address how the delivery date should not be affected by Brian's delay. Okay, so actually, I think I might have forgot that I just kind of softly addressed it here. So this was an area as well that you could have discussed it. It's just in the perfect tender rule that he did not do it. But I do like, what we just did here a second ago above in terms as well. So I think you could have done either way there of addressing that elephant. But yeah, perfect tender, assuming there was a contract formed and both of those were terms, they were not followed. Brian then, right, and you want to write this out, under UCC, you are entitled to reject the shipment and sue. So when somebody sends you non-conforming goods, you can reject the whole and sue, so he's entitled to do so. Breach, based on the discussion above, the court will likely find that Sam breached the contract. Excuses for non-performance, right? Did anybody discuss any excuses for non-performance?
Nope.
Nope. Oh, and Michael, I see you have a question.
Yeah, I was just kind of curious why there wasn't more, or there was, I know you kind of briefly went into the outline about it for the business confirming memo in the part where, I mean, basically, like the rule that I had is that a signature may be found if letters returned by email or with the name of the recipient or on letterhead. And then it said if the memo has been received and no response is given within 10 days, the sender of the confirming memo may assume the confirmation and the modifications were accepted. So
Correct.
So that I don't understand why, if Sam received Brian's purchase order but did not notice the change in gallonage, this isn't just like a dead bang, like this is his fault. He received it, it's over. He received it, he had 10 days to question it. He just looked at it and made a mistake. Now the excuse for that is the mistake, but then at least why is there any debate when in the business confirming memo after 10 days it's over? Why wasn't that just very firm?
So for me, Michael, I think you're mixing up in a way the merchant's confirmatory memo with the first oral agreement, and now what we're pretty much deeming to be a new agreement. So the merchant's confirmatory memo, I am connecting to the oral agreement for 500 gallons.
Correct. And then they're making a mistake on that based on the quantity, but they're still confirming that original agreement.
And I guess that is just kind of like, what is your vision of going through it? So my perspective on reading this is I'm going the path that this was not something that memorialized, because even then, it doesn't really make sense when it was just like, okay, we're good to go. So just write something up that memorializes it. And then it's a purchase order form and then an acknowledgement form. So even in that, it feels like it's something new, because based off of that previous statement of just write up a written confirmation, there was no expectation that he was then going to send another, okay or response to that written confirmation. So I see where you're going with it.
Yeah, I just see them saying, hey, I'll send you a written confirmation tomorrow. That confirmation doesn't come tomorrow. It comes 3 weeks later with a number on it that's changed, but they accept that confirmation memo and begin to fill the order without addressing anything within 10 days. So
I'm going the path of least resistance, in my opinion, of going a different route, is that instead you're saying that it was a written confirmation that was sent 3 weeks later. And I'm going with, there was no merchant's confirmatory memo for that original, and that situation was dead. And 3 weeks later, we just started a new agreement.
Okay. Do you think that the key and so that's okay. So, because when you were talking about the word purchase order, so you're thinking the word purchase order is kind of like a trigger to let me know, hey, this isn't really what they were talking about last time with the agreement. This is an order to purchase 5,000, not an agreement on 500.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's a combination of two things. One, it was all of that immediacy that was seemingly connected to that first one, that it just kind of feels, as I talked about with Dorothy, that like we're out of that scenario. Like we're going to immediately ship this, send this confirmation tomorrow. It'd almost be like, right now, Michael, I said like, you know what, I'm going to, train you, for this basketball tournament that's upcoming, but let me know tomorrow if you're going to go through with it, And then you're like, yeah, we're going to do it. And then it's just like 4 weeks later, you come back and you're like, and you say something. It's like, that is this natural sense. And again, we haven't seen many practice essays like this, which makes all of this so unique and creates all of this potential debate on how you could have approached it. But it does feel like we're entering another agreement.
Yeah, I went with the line where it said Sam then added that he did not want to ship without something in writing. So that, to me, that was like, okay, I'm going to wait on you to send me something in writing. And then when you send me something in writing that confirms what we discussed today, I'll send you the stuff. And then so I went on the mutual mistake of the original agreement. One guy was thinking it was 5,000 when he agreed to 500. And then the second mistake was when he got the purchase order, but didn't notice that it was 5,000, not 500. So is it when both of them make a mistake that's large like that, are those separate unilateral mistakes, or is it one?
So, and that's again, Michael, where we're interpreting it and going a different path with it, because I'm not looking at the 5,000 as a mistake, because the fact pattern, typically when you have a mistake, they kind of make it clear that way. And so here, they never said anything about Sam making a mistake, and they never said anything about, Brian. They never said anything about Brian making a mistake by putting 5,000, and they gave reasons to support it, that this was all on the heels of him getting this new conference center catering contract where he needed large quantities of pastries with these maple toppings. And there are no facts where he was like trying to get out of it. Right. There's no facts of him being like, oh, no, like I did not want 5,000, which is typically the case when somebody erroneously writes a term in. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So let's finish the rest of it, and then we can still talk.
Thank you. Sorry. Thank you.
No, absolutely, man. That was good. But I want to say, Michael, like that was what was so crazy about this question. And then, like I said, like I'm trying to go at the end of the day, the path of least resistance, because this was your curveball question of the February 24 exam. And you kind of have to figure out like, okay, what's just like, something that's logical, makes sense to get me from point A to point B on a logical outcome here. And I think all of what you're doing is pretty thoughtful, but it's almost so, like you're saying, like the double mistake and like it's something that goes too far off of what we've seen in previous exams to give me confidence to go that route, because it's now getting too creative in a sense. Does that make sense?
Totally.
Yeah. Okay, good. So let me go ahead and go back
Thank
to
you. Thank you for taking the time for that. Sorry.
Yeah, no worries. Absolutely. So, where are we at? All right, so then performance. Perfect tender, no. Breach. We were going to excuses for non-performance, and Wood had said no, we didn't discuss any, and yeah, there just weren't any. Unforeseen circumstances, right? None of those. A material breach. There was no excuses for non-performance. So then you would just go into remedies. You actually had a pretty straightforward analysis here, because really the only thing you really had was lost profits on this consequential damage. But you would just run through this expectation damages. You could mention the UCC marketplace formula, because we know we have that special remedies calculation for remedies under the UCC. That's a little bit more straightforward. But again, we don't have enough numbers this wasn't like a deep remedies question. So we always know, right, when you're discussing remedies, how much of the underlying law versus remedies. This was like a 90%, 10% kind of situation, right? 90% underlying law, 10% remedies. And then lastly, specific performance, not a desired remedy because Brian lost contract for catering. All right. So he does not still want 500 at this point, or 5,000 maple topping, right? Orders likely, right? It doesn't say that he wants that, but you can still discuss it, because at the end of the day, it did say he has this issue with finding reliable sourcing for maple topping. So, again, just something to throw out there. But again, I don't think a lot of points. All right. So, Kendra, I saw that you had your hand up. Did you get your question answered, or do you still have it?
Oh yeah, I did. I actually pulled this up because I forgot the sequence of when I had this essay when we were taking it. So this one actually got a 55, not a 65. So when you're pointing out, which I'm happy that I actually came. So shout out to Miss Monique, like always. But yeah, this
You're
session
welcome,
did help.
Kendra.
Thank you. Yeah, but this session helped because it did like point out some of the holes that I had in terms of like my mistake analysis, which I feel like is probably the reason why I didn't pass this essay.
Yeah. And then again, we're going to wait for obviously them to release the sample answers so we can see which ones they selected to get a lot of clarity as to like what routes they went, especially again with this curveball type of essay. But out of curiosity, did anybody here get a 60, 65 or above on this essay by chance?
I did. Vincent did. I got a 60. 60.
Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
Me too, 60.
Okay, awesome. So you guys both got 60s on this. So, and was that Michael?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So let's go with Michael first. So Michael, which of these topics or headings, like how consistent would you say? Like, what did you get from that we discussed? What'd you get? What'd you do that was different? We already you kind of went a different way, but at least it was still the same topics, but just kind of like different route. Yeah.
I think I missed a point definitely on remedies just by not discussing consequential damages, but I did talk about how they lost profits because it's a new business. The judges don't usually award lost profits with a new business because there's nothing for them to pull that information from. So I had that. I did basically a heading for statute of frauds, business confirming memo, irrevocable offers, and firm offers, mutual mistake, and then I disregarded 2207, and I did one for merchants too, and that they were both merchants. So I had a decent amount of headings. I should have put. I think I didn't heading my answer well enough. I had all of my rules. I had all of my rules out at front, and then I just kind of start, and it's like, even though I put all those rules, I almost like connected the facts to the rules as opposed to connecting the facts to the issue. if that makes sense.
Mm.
A little bit. So like once I got all these rules down, I was like, oh, here there's a contract for goods, which is maple topping between two merchants, a baker and a supplier. Thus, we follow the law under the UCC. Brian's a commercial baker, Sam's the owner, and they both have an understanding of the market. And yeah, so it's just like I think I wrote it too much like a newspaper article.
Got it. Okay, yeah. We're gonna put up the link for consultations too at the end. So if you want to do like a deep dive together on that and how to approach it a little bit differently, we can definitely unpack that. But it sounds like more or less again, we might have went down a different fork in the road. But it sounds like more or less you talked about a lot of what we had, minus you only did maybe mutual mistake where I did unilateral mistake, but you did.
Yeah, I didn't do unilateral. I definitely didn't do unilateral. I only did mutual.
Yeah.
I did do statute of frauds, and I did have them cobbling a contract together because you can kind of put it together through multiple documents.
Exactly.
And then
you can put, yep, exactly.
Yes, so
that was the one that they just got really tricky here, right? Because they like it wasn't just this like, yeah, traditional, oh, you can, put multiple writings together to make it, and that's all it was. It's really this question of, did Brian want 5,000 or not? And was this really 500? So then therefore was this then a writing of the 500 just with a inconsequential error, right? So a lot of paths. But yeah, let's go to Vincent. And just out of curiosity, Vincent, anything strikingly different that you did than what we have here?
No, and I have not looked at my actual answer to look at it again yet. I was going to do it, but I got back just in time to read this. But right in the beginning, when you kind of looks like made very quick work of the offer acceptance consideration, the formation piece, I distinctly remember spending quite a bit of time on that. And then I just kind of went from there. But can you repeat something you said earlier? Because I swear that would have helped me get at least 5 more points. You said like, who are they and what did they want? What was your exact? Can you say it again?
Yeah. Why are the parties upset and what do they want? Why are the parties upset and what do they want? And I'm happy you acknowledge that as something that possibly would get you extra points, because I think that is a question that you ask yourself before every essay question to help round out your issue spotting and your understanding of how you're going to approach this. And in this case, why are the parties upset and what do they want? That kind of forced you at the beginning of this to figure out which route are you going here, right? Like, are you going with this was a mistake or not, instead of kind of figuring that out in the middle as you're going. So that's what that does. Like before you start writing, it forces you to really position the parties, see what they want. All right, cool. Let's now write with that now guiding light, that North Star.
Yes, thank you.
Awesome. All right, everybody. Any wrap up questions on this contracts essay before we wrap up this session today?
Real quick, it seems like as convoluted as this essay was, and I see how you broke it down. If I would have discussed, I think just unilateral and mutual mistake, I think I would have at least an extra 5 points on my essay. And I'm mad at myself because it's like when I told you I had a block and I just couldn't put it out. So, but life happens.
Yeah, exactly. It happens, right? But yeah, like to your point, either mutual or unilateral mistake should have definitely went on this essay, just depending on how you're like, did he mean 500? So that makes this mutual. Did he mean 5,000? Yeah, did he mean 500? So therefore it was a mutual mistake, or did he mean 5,000, making it only a unilateral? But yeah, mistake was a good one to definitely discuss, but it's all good. We're going to learn from it and make sure we don't make the same mistake. Karen, do you have a follow-up question?
I'm actually just want to comment on what follow up on what Wood just said. And I'm so mad at myself too, because I spent so much time discussing an issue that was non-existent, like PER, like I just mentioned. And like and then I freaked out when I see this whole question is as convoluted as was, and it like so many issues happening. I freaked out and I completely forgot the folder system. So I'm like, okay, so I'm going to start talking about parole evidence rule and here and there.
Yes.
And it's like, so I freaked out.
And so to that point, everybody, remember, that's why I always tell you, or I tell my students, you know, I don't tell all you guys, but the students in my program, right? I always tell is that, or I always say is that, let me go to, oh yeah, here it is, the outline. Once you actually like figure out what headings you're going to have and talk about, nothing here was necessarily like a crazy analysis, right? There wasn't no big 207 question, a big this, big that, right? Like we went through contract formation, pretty straightforward. We went through statute of frauds. And again, it was debatable in gray, but that's a straightforward analysis. Then you went through formation again, a very simple modification, right? And then you went through basically a failure to perfectly tender. So my point is, and then even the remedies was very straightforward. My point is that this was not in theory, a racehorse exam with a lot of issues to talk about, or it wasn't even an in-depth analysis really, where you could really stretch this out with a bunch of arguments on both sides, like let's say a con law essay. So this was really a organization puzzle and really a issue spotting, you know, exam. So what I've gathered from a lot of students today is that, right, like we basically kind of read through this and then just kind of started getting into it and putting some headings and just like throwing the kitchen sink. I want you all to recognize on the bar exam that, hey, okay, this is the curveball question. Like this is a lot going on. And when that's the case, you don't rush into writing. You actually take more time, right? An additional 5 minutes, maybe even 10 to like think through it. So you make sure you're throwing the dart on the bullseye instead of possibly kind of, right, misfiring into different directions. So good lesson, right? The bar exam almost always has at least one question that is like this. Okay. Before we take, I definitely going to take those last two questions. I'm definitely down to stay for some more time to answer more or hear more comments. Before we do, I just want to go ahead and pull the screen up for all those that are interested in joining the program. We have the QR code here. We have our self-study program, and we also have our live program with live essay workshops where we do things like this. We also have live MBE workshops where we go through multiple choice strategy and questions as well. So if you're interested in signing up for our 10-week program to prepare for the July exam, your QR code is right there. Okay, take a screenshot, take a picture, etc. And then if you are interested in doing a one-on-one consultation, right, regardless of which program you're taking, if you want to really get into the weeds on where you can improve, I can interpret your scorecard. I can do some essay writing feedback on this contracts essay to see how your writing looks, how your analysis looks, and where the overall presentation can improve. And then we can talk about any and all of your circumstances going into the bar exam, so we can make sure we have a customized attack plan that puts you on success to make the improvements that you need to make in order to be successful. So there's the link to book consultations. We're only doing consultations this week and next, and it's just me doing them. So if you want them, make sure you sign up soon before they fill up. Awesome. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and give everybody, you know, who's ready to get back to their evening, the okay to leave. We're going to also have a session tomorrow on the MBE. We're going to be going over strategy and some questions and really how to do proper practice to prepare yourself for the MBE. So that'll be tomorrow's session. Look forward to seeing everybody there. All right, so great session, guys. And then I'll take the remaining questions that we have. Michael.
It was just I was just reading that first paragraph again. It was interesting what you were saying about slowing down for a second, because if you just really kind of take the language outside of the legal language, but how it says, well, yeah, they orally agreed Sam would immediately ship 500 gallons. Sam then added he did not want to ship something without it in writing. Brian replied, no problem, I'll send you written confirmation tomorrow. So it's like that immediate shipment was going to go out tomorrow. And then if who's to say the maple supplier would have had it 3 weeks later? Who's to say whatever?
Exactly.
So even if maybe I get a 65 or a 70 if I mention what I mentioned, but I should say, you know, given that they said immediately and given that this was a written confirmation for tomorrow, although maybe a slight interpretation here, it's more likely that that contract or that ability to service that contract ended and a new one was sent 3 weeks later, and then just I'd have all those extra points. but missing the
Yes.
simple words like immediately. And even though I didn't miss it, I just interpreted immediately for I'll send the confirmation tomorrow as, oh, he just lagged, not a whole nother thing. And it's when they are giving you words like that, you got to make sure you're slowing down. And why are they saying immediately? Why are they doing that? And I didn't do that. I connected it to words later on in the fact pattern, not in that pair right then and there. And I think that just when you broke it down like that, that made me think about it like, God, I never even thought about it as two contracts until hearing this. And then I read the immediately and I hear it all differently now when I read it.
Man, awesome takeaway. I'm gonna go ahead, like we have an orientation for bar prep. I'm gonna show you one of the slides that basically you just kind of came to on your own, and I'm gonna give you something to tagline it, to remember it for the future. So, all right, let me share screen. Just pulled it up. All right, so in my pre-writing phase, right, after I read through the entire question, I stop and think. And right, the first question I ask myself is the one that we just asked, right? Why are the parties upset and what do they want? The other one, Michael, is what is the fact pattern being oddly specific about? Or what are the elephants in the room? So yes, that is part of your elevation as a bar student. And that was mine, right? When there was a moment when I was in my bar studies 10 years ago where it clicked of like, I have to stop reading these questions, you know, almost like in this like tense, pressure-filled way where I'm almost like on the clock, gotta quickly analyze, and get to what it is. And more so, I have to like accept this as a scenario and really make sure I'm listening and I'm picking up what they're putting down. Right. It's like way I like to say, that I'm really catching where they're trying to guide me. And there you go. So you go back to this fact pattern, and to your point, right, at that very beginning, they're really building this, as I said, like if I'm kind of going where they're taking me, yeah, this whole immediacy and
I got to get it done right now. I don't have a reliable source. I got to get this done right now. I need it immediately. And then it doesn't happen for 3 weeks. That's telling you, hey, bro, notice that the immediate thing ended. Focus on now. This is a new thing 3 weeks later.
Yes. And then look, and when you're adding on to that, Michael, that's why I said with Dorothy earlier, it's like they make it vague, right? But if you follow all the clues, it's 3 weeks later after that immediacy. It's on the heels of this new contract with this conference center for some large quantities of pastries. And then there's no facts of Brian ever saying, or the facts saying that Brian made a mistake. And there's no facts at all of Brian saying like, I don't want the 5,000, you know? So then, yeah.
Yeah. So I got the nice bonus points for the issue I was supposed to address and dismiss, and not the easy points for the two contracts that they just put right in front of you by just recognizing the simple language that you should know from English.
There we go, man. There we go. So that power in just like that patience of reading the question. And I think the reason why you still got a decent score is because you are obviously intelligent and articulate to still be able to like make something that makes sense. Like that's why I said the path of least resistance. Like you put some stuff together, right? But it was like almost a very difficult path, and maybe not the path that we're expecting, at least that they went through that on that cut sheet.
Yeah.
Awesome stuff, man.
Well, thank you very much. This was really helpful tonight. Very helpful.
Good.
Thank you.
You're welcome, man. Hopefully see you tomorrow. We got some good stuff for MBE as well.
All right. See you then. Thank you.
All right, brother.
Bye-bye.
All right, Alana, Dorothy, I see you guys are still in here, just listening in. Any last questions before we hop off?
Alana wants you to put up the cut sheet one more time because she came in late, if you can.
Sorry,
Oh, yeah.
DeAndre.
Sorry.
Thanks,
What'd you
Monique.
say? Say it again.
Welcome.
Oh, thank you. So you can take some screenshots. So this was the first page of it. All right, and then this is the second page.
All right, got it. Thank you.
I think just so you can know the way my brain works, this to me was the most straightforward, easy essay. So, like, I'm dead serious. It was like this one I felt like was the easiest one. I'm like, oh, UCC, merchants, business confirming memo. I got no problem. This isn't 227. The term they're arguing about is material. There's no problem. And I didn't even feel like no problem. I just felt good about it because I knew all the little intricate things about the confirming memo and all this stuff. So it's just kind of funny that you're saying this is the curveball, and I'm like, curveball for me was essay 2. Jesus.
Oh man, it's so funny too, because for our bar prep, our homework essay, man, it's like almost a replica of number 2. So myself and hopefully most of my students, right, they were very, very prepared for that because we've seen that in detail with the way that we cover it. But yeah, I think now as we see, having gone through this one, we can see now why this is the curveball, because it's like it's such a unique application of some of the rules that we know so well, and it was very clear. So
it just kills me because knowing contracts that well and or feeling like I know it that well, it wouldn't have been hard to analyze the second piece as its own contract, and that was worth so many points. But I'm analyzing it as a piece of my 2-part mistake, and so you can only get points for that one part.
Yep.
And just, man, oh, that's good to hear though. At least I don't feel, that's not as bad as like feeling like I did on essay 2, where I'm like, I know that wasn't good.
Yeah, right. Look, and the thing is, like, right, you said you still got a 60 on it, and it's like, again, this was, as we can see, this was a very difficult essay for most of the students. So, keep that in mind that, like, to your point, it's almost like, like, it sounds like you really like contracts. So, like, damn, I was really capable of really crushing this one. But yeah, keep it in mind though, like, it sounded like you still probably did better on this particular one than a lot of, like, this is the type of essay where, it's kind of like you just at least want to get that 60, 65 when it's that crazy. But again, I think it's that competitor in you, and that, like, you could have crushed it. That's like, oh man, I left points on the table.
Well, I mean, yeah, I got some interest. I'm looking forward to being there tomorrow because I did some wacky stuff this far.
Yeah. Awesome, man. Well, yeah, come tomorrow. Get you out of track. Yeah. See you, Alana. I'll see you guys all tomorrow. You guys have a great night, and we'll continue taking the steps.
Thank you. See you tomorrow.
All right.
Bye.